jailbreak, the bank robberies rather, of Cecil Township past, back in the day there was banks in this township. I remember the one down the street we would always use, and now my father complains that he just can't go and use the ATM right there. So, well, hey, yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. We got a great presentation tonight. We're fundraising for the jail. We haven't forgot about the jail. We're still working on it. We've heard about the high grass. We've heard about the deteriorating conditions of this jail. So we're going to go ahead and press the gas on this. So hopefully we can get this done using some grant money. It'll be a community benefit for the whole community to go and enjoy this piece of Cecil Township history, this really unique, one-of-a-kind history of Western Pennsylvania. You don't see this in other municipalities. This is truly a piece of history that we want to preserve and be proud of this kind of history here in Cecil Township. So we are fundraising for that. Fill out your information over here. We're collecting money, and we're also going to be selling shirts tonight, right? We're going to start that off tonight, sell shirts. We do have some shirts. Check out the shirts, which are right here up front. We are selling those tonight. So we have two different shirts, and we got two shirts. One's going for 20, the other's going for 30. How much is that going for?
This one is 20.
Okay. So
But if you're not a member and you'd like to join so you can get a shirt.
it's look, it's made out of good stuff. This is going to go right back to the jail. This is going to us, a nonprofit. It's not going in anybody's pocket. You can rock some cool swag, put it in your closet, then come back to it 10 years later and remember that you were there in that jail before we ever did anything with it. So
Also, this is the other one that we're selling really to support the jail. And you'll notice both of them have our Cecil Township Historical Society here with the lantern lining. So we cut that. But on the back, we have saved the Cecil Jail. So I think people would see this.
yeah, that looks great. That's a carbon copy of the Cecil jail. So look, just a piece of memorabilia. It helps. It goes right back into this building. It's going to go. Every penny really is going to go into this to help get this project done. So.
And these would be 30.
Yeah. So the light blue is 20. The dark blue is 30. Good. Good stuff. Good memorabilia. Word around town, and maybe spark a conversation with somebody about, hey, there's that jail right in downtown in Cecil. You might not see it, but you can see it from the road, and then give somebody something to look at. Just is it Morgan Road? You go down Morgan Road where the cemetery of the Alleghenies is. I learned here. You look to the right. There's 4 rock pillars in a square or a rectangular kind of shape. That's a grave of American Indians, and something that I grew up in this area, never realized it was there. Just like this jail, there's a lot of history all around us here in Cecil Township.
The inside of that, those pillars is family.
So it's
In the surrounding area of those pillars is where they believe there's some Indians.
okay. So pioneers of the area. You can see it, and they still mow it.
That's another presentation.
So, look, I want to really appreciate everybody showing up tonight. We talked to one of our members tonight. If you'd like to join, visit cecilhistory.com. Any suggestions, let me know. I maintain the website. I'm very active and approachable and reachable. I'd like to introduce Kathy Pigford, who's going to give us our presentation tonight on bank robberies, not jailbreaks. I guess similar crime, but
No jailbreaks.
bank robberies of Cecil Township.
Yeah, he got this on, right? Got this on? Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the jail, of the bank and how it started in Cecil. We shouldn't have talked about that beforehand. In October of 1903, the comptroller of the currency approved the application to organize the First National Bank at Cecil, PA. It had $25,000 in capital. There's the original, the front of the First National. That's the original bank that was built. You can see it has a basement, 2 floors. There were apartments on the upstairs, and they rented out some of the apartments. Then you put the second picture. Yeah, that's a side view of the same bank. And you'll see it's right where Billy Ann's is currently. And that, you see the bars on. This bank did more banking than we thought.
I'm going to give you a pointer so you can point.
Okay, in January of 1904, the directors were appointed. They were Henry Borchard of Canonsburg, Oswald Eude, E-U-D-E, of Carnegie, A.J. DeBrillis, I know I'm pronouncing these wrong because they're French or something, G.H. Hastings, Nick Klein, Valentine Klein, T.K. Tope, Adam Wagner, he was president, and Dr. Rhines Williams of Federal. Mr. Ignatius Stauffer was named as cashier. A little added information, the Klein brothers, Nick and Valentine, were the ones that owned the property where the jail was. The jail is now. That's who sold the jail property to the township. Okay, then we're good for. Okay. In January of 1907, the stockholders' officers were President Adam Wagner, Vice President A.J. DeBrillis, Cashier W. Benny. The directors were still Henry Borchard, A.J. DeBrillis, Oswald Eude, G.H. Hastings, Max Klein, Valentine Klein, J. Wallace, and Dr. Rhines Williams. And according to Cashier Benny, in October of 1908, the banking industry in Cecil was very brisk. Then we have some action comes in. On September 28th, 1909, the janitor of the bank, he lived in the apartments up above the bank. He took his own life. His wife and his son lived in the apartment with him. They were having the marital difficulties, and they had left him. And I guess he was still coming to work, but they said he seemed real melancholy and just not himself. Well, but as long as he was showing up for work, they didn't think anything would happen. And then he didn't show up for work for 2 days. They went upstairs to his apartment, knocked on the door, no answer, so they forcibly entered the room, and they found him dead. Okay, now we move on to November of 1914. A lawsuit was filed by the bank against surety companies subsequent to January 4th, 1911, but prior to April 4th, 1914, when cashier Charles W. Benny embezzled $21.24 of the bank funds. The bank was seeking money back from the bonding company, and they said they weren't paying because they were under the impression that the Bennys made full restitution, of which was $11,917.15 in personal property, consisting of $100 deposit, 135 shares of Pittsburgh Brewing Company stock, other stock as security for the loan, and his interest in Murray Oil Company and other property worth $9,900. The bank ended up getting $7,500 from the bonding company, but that was many years later. Okay, now our first bank robbery. October 3rd, 1918, 2 bandits made an attempt to rob the bank. The vault doors were blown open, but the safe was intact. They blew open the outer door and the inner safe door, but they failed to get the vault door open, the main flank. They think that the robbers were frightened away. They did get away with some money, and they got away with 17 cents. And this attempted robbery was later linked to blank robbers who robbed a Bridgeville bank in December. And then we have they had a gentleman working at the bank in 1924 it says painfully injured while working in the vault. It doesn't say how. And then on March 15th, 1931, a fire was reported at 757. Then the fire was reported out at 8:02, and the fire company never even went to the call. It was. Then in October of 1931, there was a bunch of bad checks sweeping the area of Washington and Allegheny County, and they ended up arresting Thomas Kirby. He was 45 of Bishop, and he was arrested by the McDonald police. There were over $1,800 in forgeries. After he got caught, he left his wife and 4-month-old baby before leaving, he forged a check in his mother-in-law's name and took $200 from her account at the McDonald Bank. And he was involved in many other scams within the area. Now we get to the big robbery. November 16, 1933, thugs secured $2,000 from the Cecil Bank. 3 masked men around 11 a.m. approached Mr. Muscovy and asked to get change in nickels. And when he reached down to get the coins, they drew revolvers and commented, "Hands up." One covered the workers and the other 2 scooped up silver and currency and then requested the 2 employees to take them to the vault. They collected more currency but overlooked a considerable amount that was hidden. They did not take any bonds or other securities. The bandit wanted to lock him in the safe, but Mr. Muscovy argued that they would suffocate. So they put them in the basement. This is a replica of Joe's Muscovy reenacting the hands up. And this is Adam Wagner, president of the bank, and he's in, you see him, he's in under by the trap door. That comes in now. So anyway, he didn't want to suffocate, so they put him in the basement through that trap door. And then they pulled a heavy desk over top so that they couldn't escape. So on their way out, though, they tore down the telephone wires so nobody could call for help. So while they were in the basement, that's the outside of the bank on the day of the robbery. The next one. Okay, this is Mr. Wooten, a barber, whose barber shop was right across the street from the bank. And the 2 gentlemen that were in the basement, they broke out the window and were screaming for help from the basement. And Mr. Wooten heard their calls from the barber shop and went over, and then he went into the bank and uncovered the trapdoor so they can get back out. And the newspaper articles give a description of the bandits and stated that all the bandits were armed and had pillowcases to put the money in. They said that if one bandit was in the bank, one of them was in the bank a few days prior and asked for $1 worth of nickels. And for some reason, he made a mental note of the license plate number of the automobile, and that's how they ended up catching him. Then on, this is the same thing, Jack Mange, he was 35. He originally was from around here, but he was arrested in Canton, Ohio for this robbery. He lived there for 2 years, and he still had $309 in bills from the bank on him when he was arrested, but he refused to name his accomplices. The police later found that Angelo Salamone, 22 of Washington, was later identified as the driver of the vehicle. He was to drive to the county fairgrounds and wait for Mange. At this time, he thought Mange was running liquor. And then Mange and 2 other men met him in a car with Ohio plates. Salamone was given $5 and was told to hide the car in Allison Hollow. The car was found the following Sunday by a farmer in the woods in the back of Houston with a license plate missing. In February of 1934, $1,893.14 was the total amount that was stolen, and the trial was set for February 13th. But at this time, the FDIC took over the bank, and all the assets and everything were transferred to the First National Bank of McDonald, and the bank was closed and put in the hands of a conservator. On February 14th, he pled guilty, but his sentencing was postponed. Then they discovered that John Fondale, alias Farley, of Salem, New Jersey, was identified as one of the other bandits. He was arrested in New Jersey for another bank robbery there. He was identified by Mr. Muscovy, who, along with the detective, went to New Jersey to identify him. In April, the bank reopens with 80% of its funds available, capital of $50,000 with a surplus of $10,000 and all new officers. Newspapers reported that the citizens felt prosperity has turned the corner for the Cecil district. Mange ended up getting sentenced for 6.5 to 13 years in Western Penitentiary, and Fondale, alias Farley, alias Fondalone, was sentenced in New Jersey for 14 to 28 years, but the third bandit was never apprehended, and I don't believe he was ever identified. Then in 36, were robbed again. A pair of bandits used a stolen car to rob the bank. At this robbery, they herded the employees into the vault and escaped with about $4,000. But these bandits failed to lock the vault door behind them, and the employees were able to escape quickly after they left the bank. But the two employees gave chase. They lost the trail when they found the car abandoned. Two of the employees at the bank were also two that were involved in the previous bank robbery. Yeah, and it said when they came in, they just asked for the manager, and cashier John F. Wagner was working behind the wicket. And then he was told to open his cage, and they shoved a revolver in his chest. Mr. Providence was working in the bank. He was another one. Him and Muscovy were the two that were both bad, like both robberies. But the other bandit covered Mr. Muscovy near the rear of the bank. They put all the employees in the vault and slammed the door. They scooped all the paper money from the till, and when a customer entered the bank, he was shoved into a corner and told to be quiet. He was a regular customer of the bank, and the bandits got into a tan sports coupe and fled towards Canonsburg. Mr. Muscovy and Mr. Pokovich gave chase in Muscovy's car. The customer also ran to his car and joined in the chase. The car was found abandoned on the highway near Churchill. Prior to this robbery, the bandits were in Dormont, and they went to a car sales place and asked this Emil Eisman to test drive a car. Well, when they neared Bridgeville, the men overpowered the salesman, tied his hands behind his back. These are the victims of the holdup. This is the county detective questioning Eisman because after they tied his hands behind his back, they took his clothing and forced him from the car, and they fled. Immediate search was underway, and authorities believed they were either hiding in the immediate area or they had slipped through the cordon of police encircling the area before it could be tightened. Here he's reenacting how he was tied up. This is, yeah, we're coming up to him.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Then in September of 1937, now we can put him up. This man was wanted for bank robbery, and he was arrested in Michigan. His accomplice served 8 to 16 years in Western Penitentiary. However, this gentleman was also involved in a murder in Michigan after a robbery, and he was found guilty there. So while Pennsylvania kept it on record that they wanted him extradited back here, they were going to let whatever happened to him there happen first. But he received a death sentence, and Michigan was a state that didn't allow corporal death sentence. So they were trying to get his execution moved to a different state, but it didn't happen. So he was executed on July 8th, 1938, despite Michigan having the law. And only an intervention by President Roosevelt could have stopped the execution. So yeah, a little bank robber in Cecil ends up being executed for murder. He was a gangster.
Sorry to interrupt you, but several of us recognize the name Jim Torres.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They live in Henderson.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, they lived on
out there, yeah.
He owned the property that became the turnpike.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Is that interesting? His family. Yeah.
Does anybody remember his first name?
This would be his father. I'll have to check that out. Oh, yeah, Muscovy is a local name. Yeah, he has a lot of, lot happened with him here as the bank. Okay, then we move to September of 1950. John F. Wagner, who, as you remember, was the president of the bank, was found deceased inside the bank. And at that time that he was found, the deputy coroner pronounced him dead of a heart attack in the lobby, but then confirmed 2 or 3 days later it was an actual suicide. They had a very nice obituary for him, written for as a highly regarded member of the community. He was a cashier at the bank, and at the time of the death, he didn't feel the community. This deputy coroner didn't feel, because he was so high in the community, he didn't feel that the true cause of death was important for other people to know, just his immediate family. Well, it just so happened that the federal government was getting ready to come to Cecil Bank because there was a big money scandal there. And his committing suicide just pushed everything forward, moving on and that. But he was going to get caught. So he just decided to kill himself first. But it ended up he shot himself, and he was inside the vault, not in the lobby of the bank. And he was being investigated for overdrafts at Cecil Bank, and they were ready to swoop down. The scandal involved quite a few local businessmen from Cecil and the surrounding towns, Bridgeville, Cannonsburg. I'm not going to get into the names. There were 9 of them. And once again, the bank was closed. All the assets went over to McDonald, so everybody had to go to do their banking over that. And one of the newspaper reports said that the Cecil Bank books defied even experts. That's how Muscovy had, Wagner had moved the money around in the bank. They estimated at that time $1.8 million was out there somewhere. And it said the only real losers in the wrecking ball of the bank were the 30 shareholders. The deputy coroner ended up getting dismissed from his job because they felt it was a cover-up. And he denied that. He said it was just, he didn't feel it was important. So then on October 4th, 1950, the bank closes its doors. Then we have, in 51, the bank's reopened now, and Tony Cassiola of Morgan was killed after the motorcycle he was a passenger in plunged into the bank building. I don't know where they were going or coming from, but I found that interesting that somebody even got killed there. But then back to the scandal, newspapers were reporting at that time that the looters would probably not face criminal charges. I want to say most of them paid back what they had got from the Mr. Wagner and that. But the government takes over Mr. Wagner's assets. Indicted were 8 businessmen and 1 assistant cashier, who happened to be Mr. Muscovy. The few of them had trials. Most of them settled out of court and did that. The only one that got jail time, as he pled no defense, was Muscovy. And that was because the judge felt he knew better. And he let it go on and didn't report it. He received 1 year and 1 day in jail. On September 4th, 1956, the bank property goes up for sale. It would be a cash sale at the front of the building, which includes a strip of land between the bank and Miller's Run Creek. Guaranteed offer of $13,500. 1957, Cecil Bank opens as the Cecil office of the Bridgeville National Bank with manager Theodore G. Daniels, and it was in the same building at that time. Then in September 1960, two men, George Stankus and Billy Stankus, brothers, robbed at gunpoint the bank of $10,400. One robber inside the bank and the other was the driver. He approached the teller with a gun and a brown paper bag. To the manager at that time was Robert Prevost. All the money you have in the drawer. The robbery lasted 3 to 4 minutes. These men fleeing, going to Hendersonville in a blue 1955 Buick. We have a picture of the Buick. There it is. That was used.
It's blue. It's blue.
It's blue, yeah. And from there, they abandoned it over, I don't know if you people all probably remember Cool Valley, over off of Hendersonville over there, in the little dip there. That's where they found the car. And then from there, they took a tan Buick. Adele Tischer, who was a teller, also had the gun turned on her, and she later described he was wearing a tan Ivy League cap, sunglasses with a phony mustache. Prevost was told to hurry up and no funny business. $7,000 was taken from the crash drawer and $3,000 from the vault. As the gunman left, he passed Oscar Desmond, owner of the Desmond Lumber and Supply Company, and he observed the license plate number of the getaway car. Also in the parking lot, he passed Manuel LaRue, who thought it was just a customer. Then a sizable group of FBI and state police, county detectives, and the local police department swarmed the Cecil Township area immediately afterward. There were 3 men, a de Blasio, a Carl Thomas, and a Roseanne, were charged with the bank robbery of Bridgeville National Bank, but they believe they also did the Cecil Bank robbery. 3 of the 6 youths, because they were all young kids, involved in this robbery were sentenced to the maximum term of 25 years, but the judge gave them each another 25 years for the other robberies they were involved with. Now we're moving. We're back into 1972. This more memory here. First National Bank and Trust Company of Washington opened a branch in Cecil, located at right off of Cecil Elementary Drive, in the parking lot where the Assumption Hall is. I don't know if anybody recognizes their Volkswagen. They had this bank was new and improved. It had 4 inside tellers and a drive-in window. The tellers were Miss Pamela Sturgeon, Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell, and Mrs. Kay Moore. Ted Checka was the chairman of the bank committee, and the bank was moved as the old bank was being demolished for the construction of new Route 50. And at that time, they had a community meeting at the Cecil American Legion for plans to make sure Cecil had a bank. And then I just found this out earlier this month, so I added it. Thank you, Kim. On February 2nd, 1975, the bank had to clean up the money.
Lost my,
Oh, that's all right.
oh no,
Yeah.
I'll find him.
Okay. Anyway, the bank had to clean the money because the water from Miller's Run seeped into the vault at the bank. The bank representatives wouldn't discuss a definite amount, but stated it was several $1,000s. It was believed that the nearby construction of Route 50 may have been responsible for the flooding. The water was about 4 feet in the basement and reached the first drawer level of the desk and filing cabinets in the bank, damaging travelers' checks, bonds, and other valuables stored in the vault. Since wet money is classified as mutilated by the Federal Reserve, they would not accept the money. So the solution was to put the money into mesh bags and put them in a dryer. So Mr. Gregorkas, owner of Snowy White Laundries in Canonsburg, helped him. He closed down the laundromats, and the money was transported under guard, put in all the dryers, and the problem was solved. It took them about an hour and a half to finish. So that way our money was good again. December 17th of 1975, a lone gunman escapes on foot. He was a male, 18 to 19 years old, with blue ski mask, and used a 4 to 6 inch barrel handgun and he went up St. Mary's Hill. There's no further details on this robbery. From what I heard from Scuttlebutt was his father paid all the money back, so it was just, the matter was just dropped. I know there was a search made on foot and by helicopter for him, and he was last seen about 100 yards north of the building. And then finally, we get a Pittsburgh National Bank. Only lasted a few years, and it closed in May of 2013. PNC said it was no longer feasible, and once again, Cecil is without a bank.
Excellent. Thanks. You want to answer some questions?
Yeah, anybody have questions?
Yeah, I got a little statement about that last robbery.
Yeah.
I'm growing up and having a business in the town. I think I know who they caught robbing now.
Yeah, I've heard people know who.
Yeah, young and young. But how they caught him was, he bought his 1962 Corvette off the retail to pay cash. They found out, they went up to his locker up to high school, and all the money was in his locker.
Oh my gosh. Kim was telling me that.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. But there was nothing in the note. My information I got mostly from like Jim and Kim, you know, sharing stories and, you know, and looked it all up in the newspaper.
His new name now is Gilbert.
Huh?
We call him Jailbird.
But it's hard to believe that small town as Cecil was, that we had so many bank robberies, and they were also involved in other bank robberies in the area and, you know, stuff like that. The gentleman that was writing the bad checks, he was from Bishop. One of the bank robbers was from Use. So, I mean, there were a lot of, they were a lot of local people, you know, that you wouldn't think and that. But any other questions?
Some people, as I was watching that, a lot of it was in the early 1930s, and that was when the Depression.
Yeah.
So some of those people, they were in the
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A few of them in the early 30s.
Yeah, because when you're looking up bank robberies, there were a lot. Yeah, Bridgeville was hit a lot with bank robberies. Hmm? Yeah. And then after it was, and right beside it was Adamski's there?
Across the street.
It was across the street?
The gas station, the
That was Pascher's that was across the street. I thought Adamski's was in front of that?
Danske was right across the street, because there's a big parking lot there.
Okay.
And then East Henderson Road come out to 50.
Yeah.
Danske was on the corner, and our garage was up the street. Well, you know where the lift station is?
Yeah, I knew that, where that was your place, yeah. Yeah. But I knew Adamski's was there. Actually, it looks like you can see the gas pumps.
Yeah.
And that's where Danske, once the 50 took the Danske drug out, that's where he moved.
And I believe the building with the awning across the street was the Cloverleaf? No? Wait. Okay. Well, Wood was there somewhere, so,
is up where the red brick house is,
yeah.
and Iannarelli's now there.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That guy cut my hair, he only had one leg, okay? He had a chair there for cutting hair, and on that chair, his shirt went around.
Oh,
He had to stand on his feet. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
uh-huh, yeah.
Pretty cool, like this.
Before Arlene Curry passed away, I met with her to interview her for the Historical Society, and she had a lot of interesting stories of the, you know, what was down there and, you know, on up through Cecil and stuff like that. Very interesting stuff.
We had an appliance store there.
Hmm?
Appliance store.
Yes, Burquest.
Yeah, that's my.
Yeah, wasn't he Maytag?
Yeah, it's Maytag.
Yeah.
My aunt's brother. Yeah, he owned that. That was that brick house that
Yeah,
is now the
yeah.
Dow.
If you remember further down was Cecil Hotel. That was very popular back then. But you can see where Cecil started to grow because the banks came in what was it, 1903. The jail went in 1906. They voted, well, they started in 1903 and 4 asking for their, to have a jail put in. So that's when Cecil really started to become a booming town.
Yeah, the 1903 is the same year they put the railroad through here. If you look on the overpasses,
Mm-hmm.
1903.
Yeah,
That's when things started moving. They brought the railroad.
yeah. If there's anything you'd like to hear about, I'm willing to do it research and find out what I can about it. But I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
I wonder what year the French immigrated to Cecil. French population entered.
I think they came in the late 1800s or early 1900s because that was, they were part of the first miners that were here. In fact, I remember reading on the Ridgeway mine, a lot of the miners that were killed, they didn't know them by name, they just knew they were a Frenchman. And that's what they're, it's listed in the coal mine records, just a Frenchman. And they did have a place down in South Fayette in Morgan where they had like English as a second language. You could go down, and I think it was started by the French, where they could learn English since they were here for the coal mining. All right, enjoy the snacks, enjoy the treats. Like I said, if there's anything else you want research on, let me know. I'll try and find out what I can. I am working on a tour of Venice Cemetery, and then I'm going to do a presentation on the other two cemeteries, the older ones on Swihart Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Cash. Thanks. Very good. Hey, how are you? Good. How's everything? All right.